Committee. It is just past the Ides of March. Now it's March 16th, and I want to welcome everyone here. My name is Xavier Santiago. I'm the Chair of Community Board 11. The meeting is officially called to order at 6:46. Thank you for your patience. Oh,
So speak again, Xavier.
the only difference now is, can everyone hear me?
Gotcha, yeah.
Were you able to hear
You
that?
cut out for a minute, yeah.
No, all right, let me start again. Take two. Welcome to our March 16th Executive Committee meeting. This is our first meeting back in person, so I appreciate everyone's patience and participating. It is approximately 6:47 p.m. I'm calling the meeting to order. My name is Xavier Santiago, Chair of Community Board 11. I am joined tonight with our District Manager, Angel Mescane, and all of our executive committee. Our executive committee is comprised of all of our committee chairs and our executive officers. This meeting will be conducted as exactly the same as all of our Zoom meetings that we've had for the past 3 years. The only difference is that you will see around the table of our chairs, they will raise their hand, wait to be acknowledged, and then the owl will be able to pivot. So I ask all the members of the table, please just wait, not to talk over, because we don't want to confuse the owl. In order to conduct an efficient meeting, let's observe a few ground rules. 1, no one may speak until granted the floor. 2, CB11 members, if you have a question about board business or wish to make a motion, please raise your hand through Zoom, or if you're here in the room in person, raise your hand physically. If you click the participant icon, the participants panel should appear, and you should find the raise hand function there. If you still have technical difficulty, you may click the chat icon and relay your difficulty to staff. Members should not engage in a back and forth discussion. The chair will recognize the next person to speak. 3, the chat function should not be used for CB11 business or questions about the agenda topics. All such remarks should be made on the record by raising your hand through Zoom. Chat should only be used to alert us to any technical difficulties you are having, or to state in writing information like an email address or telephone number that was already stated aloud on the record during the meeting. 4, when a member is given the floor to speak, I will identify you, and you may unmute yourself so that you may speak. For those at the table, I will recognize you and speak at that time. 5, please keep your questions and comments succinct and germane to this discussion. 6, members of the public, sorry, we're not having that, but all right, we'll now take attendance by roll call.
Committee members, when I call your name, please answer present. Jose Altamirano,
Present.
Stephanie Arroyo, Adem Brija, Jessica Elliott, David Giordano, John Green,
Here.
Marissa Mack,
Here.
Nilsa Orama,
Present.
Xavier Santiago,
Present.
Isaac Scott,
Present.
Michelle Wilcher Clement.
Present.
We have quorum.
Okay, the agenda for tonight's meeting was circulated in advance. We did move up one of the presentations to business that you'll see for informational updates. We will get into that in just a moment. If there are any objections to adopting the agenda, please raise your hands. Seeing no hands raised, the agenda is officially adopted. Adoption of board minutes. The minutes from the last executive committee were distributed to board members at the time of the office. There are no objections. We will adopt the minutes of that meeting. Board members, if you object to adopting the minutes, you may raise your hand. Zoom. Seeing no objections, the minutes from the last executive committee meeting are adopted. It will be posted on the CB11 website. Okay, so we're going to the agenda. Second. Okay, first up in our we have, are we going to do the metropolitan cab first? Shall we go with the metropolitan cab first? Yeah, great. All right, we have Amir Abadi. Did I pronounce that right? Wonderful.
Yes, you did. Thank you, Xavier.
Wonderful. The reason we're having this here, there wasn't enough time to schedule to adopt earlier in the week, and so we are going to have this here. Right now, they're having one house budget up in Albany, and I believe Michelle DeBaccio, right? I was invited to attend, as in the past, like Nilsa has attended and others, the Metropolitan CAP Community Advisory Board legislative breakfast. And it was really eye-opening because a lot of the items in here that are requested going before the state are dovetail nicely with our statement of district needs and our budget requests with our public hospital. But I think it's better for him to unpack it, and that's why he's here before us. So we can learn a little bit more.
Thank you very much, Xavier. Let me share a PowerPoint, if I'm allowed to, that was shared at the Metropolitan Cab. Beautiful. Excellent, thank you. Okay, can everybody see my screen?
Yes.
Beautiful. All right, everyone. My name is Amir Badi. I'm the Director of Community Affairs for New York City Health and Hospital Central Office. I'm here representing Michelle DeBacco. She is our State Legislative Director, Assistant Vice President. Currently, the New York State budget is currently unfolding. The governor's office released the executive budget back in February 1st, and the legislatures have been spending the month of February and early March coming up with what's called their one house budgets. Those were released a few days ago. Our office is still delving through each of those one house budgets to see if they included some of our key priorities. I wanted to share those priorities, and I want to thank Xavier in advance for proactively reaching out to us so that as much of this information can be shared with all of you, because we trust the community to represent us in this process. We work very closely with our community advisory board to make sure our local electeds are aware of the budget priorities we have, and lobbying those local elected officials representing the community up in Albany so they include those priorities in the final budget. The Senate produced their budget, the Assembly produced their budget, the governor has hit her budget. That means there are currently 3 budgets up in Albany that were produced as of this week, and we want to make sure that the community is aware of what the priorities are for health and hospitals in that upcoming budget. There are 3 key equity issues we have been talking about, and we encourage everybody to be aware of, because this process is not done until the final budget is approved. It's supposed to be April 1st, but rumors are that they're not going to meet that deadline. So we still have some time to affect the process. So we're hoping anybody who has a relationship with the state senators or state assembly members up in Albany and negotiating brings up to their attention some of these issues, because they should be well aware of how impactful these issues are to the local community. The first issue we're going to talk about is the pharmacy for 340B carve-out, the safety net and Medicaid funding that is in the budget, and some capital improvement funding that are in the budget. And I'll explain each of them in depth as we go through those slides. So the first thing you need to understand is the governor's proposed budget included a transition from a Medicaid managed care program to a fee-for-service program in the Medicaid pharmacy benefit. So that means people who receive Medicaid, who have their prescriptions provided through Medicaid, would no longer be participating in the traditional funding model, which is Medicaid managed care. That transition from one system to the other negatively affects New York City Health and Hospitals and Gotham, who participate in a program called 340B, prescription drug benefits. That allows our hospitals and our clinics access to reduced cost prescriptions. And those reduced cost prescriptions make their way back into the savings for individual patients. Because we would be carved out of that program with this change, it would cause a $123 million annual cut to New York City Health and Hospitals. Now, the governor in her proposed budget provided an offset of 5% increase in Medicaid payments, which is something, but it does not cover our total losses. So we would still see that negative impact by not being carved out of her 340B reform. So we're asking the legislature, it must repeal the pharmacy carve-out so that safety net providers continue to receive that benefit going forward. Now, when it comes to Medicaid funding, for all of those who might be aware, for those who aren't, Medicaid does not fully pay for the healthcare coverage that is provided. New York City Health and Hospitals are what's called safety net providers, safety net hospitals, and they serve 70% of individuals who are on Medicaid or uninsured within the city, which means we are heavily responsible for people who are underinsured or uninsured, because Medicaid, as some might know, only pays about 2/3 of the cost of care if you were to use private insurance. So if I, a person with private insurance, walk into an emergency room and a person with Medicaid walks into an emergency room, the Medicaid patient would only be paying the hospital 2/3 of the bill of the person who's privately insured. That's the way it's been, and we've been trying to get that Medicaid reimbursement rate increased for years now, and we are part of something called the Safety Net Hospital Coalition that seeks targeted funds to help us address the budget shortfalls associated with caring for the most needy individuals. The Medicaid rate increase of 5% that I mentioned before, we are advocating for that to remain in the budget, even with the 340B carve out, because we need that increased dollars from Medicaid reimbursement. And it would help us and the entire Safety Net Coalition, which includes safety net hospitals across the New York City area, attain financial stability in providing the care we provide our communities. So we are asking the legislature to not only continue that 5%, but also increase it to a total of 10%, so that all of our safety net facilities get the kind of support that they need to continue to provide services to the most needy. So we don't want them to just cut the carve out and give us a 5% increase to offset as much of the damage. We want them to keep the carve out and give us more than the 5% and increase it to the 10% we're hoping that they meet for the shortfall. Now, beyond those two priorities, there's also the conversation about capital improvements. Our infrastructure across New York City Health and Hospitals averages about 17 years old. And that's compared to 9 years old of other hospitals across New York City. The governor's budget included a $1 billion healthcare capital fund, which is great. We just want to make sure we get our fair share of those funds. And we are asking the legislature to include language that sets aside $300 million of that proposed $1 billion to safety net providers. And safety net providers is actually something defined by law in Part P of the Health and Mental Hygiene budget bill. And we want that articulated to make sure some of the bigger, better lobbied, better financed hospitals in New York do not receive a disproportionate share of that $1 billion of capital funding. So in summary, we've been advocating and we continue to advocate for the legislature to voice support in their one house budgets for repealing the pharmacy carve out, for supporting the Safety Net Coalition's proposal to fund hospitals with those increased Medicaid rates, increasing them to 10%. The 5% they're talking about is not enough, and setting aside $300 million for its capital improvement out of the $1 billion that it's already set in the governor's budget. On a city level, we also want to just share some important updates. The mayor of New York, Eric Adams, in his State of the City, introduced what's called the Working People's Agenda, and health and hospitals played an important component in that, where the mayor highlighted how healthcare is going to be provided in a different way to those in the homeless system. There's going to be a new comprehensive healthcare system set up thanks to the partnership of the state and federal government, where New York City is going to be the first in the nation to provide full wraparound care for those in New York City shelter system. The new initiative will be spearheaded by New York City Health and Hospitals and will be providing primary care and emergency care to people in those transition places. Usually they find themselves trapped in a system where healthcare is not the priority during their stay. We are working with the mayor's office and with these federal and state regulators to create a comprehensive way where we can proactively take responsibility for providing quality care for these people in their time of need. Because what we find is they're ignored until they walk in an emergency room, and then the taxpayer is taking care of that emergency bill. We can provide better care and really provide cost savings thanks to this comprehensive program that's in development. For further information, the mayor's Working People's Agenda includes details, and we just wanted to put that on everybody's radar because it's something we're very proud of that's underway. On a federal level, we also want to tip our hats to our New York City congressional delegation and our 2 U.S. senators. They helped secure $10.5 million in the fiscal year 2023 Consolidated Appropriations Act. That $10.5 million is a significant pot of change that is funding several improvements across New York City Health and Hospitals. We also want to acknowledge some major changes coming. the Biden administration has indicated the end of the COVID-19 public health emergency, which ends on May 11th. There's going to be quite a few regulatory changes because of the end of the emergency declaration. And we're working with those state elected officials to hopefully make those emergency flexibilities permanent, because we found giving us the ability to be innovative and respond to an emergency actually increased our ability to provide quality care. And we're hoping that we continue to have that flexibility even beyond the May 11th deadline. And we need the federal government to act to codify those emergency flexibilities into law. New York City Health and Hospitals is also advocating with the hospital system at large for those things. But in particular, we're also working on what is called dish cuts, something that we're very concerned about. On a federal level, there's something called disproportionate share hospital funding, which is provided on a federal level. If Congress does not act, the rules around dish funding will cause a cut to New York City Health and Hospitals. So we're putting it on everybody's radar. Hopefully Congress does its job and continues the DISH program as it is. But if they fail to act, DISH will cause New York City Health and Hospitals a cut in its budget, and we will then turn to the state legislature to fix the damage that was done in the federal process. So I just want to put that on everybody's radar. Hopefully this is a warning signal that is not needed, but we want to throw up that flare while we can. And we are also working with our federal partners to get funding for our graduate medical education program to deal with the healthcare worker shortage that the whole nation is dealing with, but especially New York City is dealing with, and provide some additional funding for our safety net hospitals infrastructure. These are all conversations we're having with Senator Chuck Schumer, Senator Gillibrand, and some Congress member Espaillat on a federal level. So we wanted to tip our hat and acknowledge them for all the work that they're doing and put these agenda items on your radar. So the next time you see them, feel free to mention this stuff, because it's stuff they should be working on very hard with us. I want to turn it over to the group to see if there's any questions or any clarification needed. This PowerPoint was shared beforehand, and I'll be happy to share it again if anybody wants a copy.
Thank you very much, Mayor. Appreciate it. And intending it, I remember Michelle mentioning they're trying to, the capital investment, to put in a new ER, right, estimated about 50 mil. So I think that's an important thing, because what they've been doing, if you have been in that emergency room, they're working very little. So I think it's important that we invest. But I'd like to go around the board. Any board members have questions?
I have a question.
Yes, Marissa.
The 3 million that you're asking for in terms of a carve out, how did you get to that number?
So 3 million for the carve out is specific for Metropolitan, and I don't want to go too deep into the numbers because I'm not the numbers guy, I'm the community guy. What I will say is the Medicare carve out affects the whole hospital system, and our finance team did an estimate of its impact facility by facility. It is an estimate, so we don't want to use our estimates as gospel. It just helps provide a literary narrative about it. What we are sure about is the 123 across the hospital system. That's a top line number that we can stand clearly about.
And then just one other question. In terms of like mental health services that are needed, I'm assuming that's within that number and has its own line item. If I know you're not the numbers person, but if you were to do a breakdown, I'm just wondering, how that was factored in terms of asking for more, and in terms of the needs of our city right now, like how did that play into this?
So when it comes to our federal lobbying regarding workforce development, we're actually spending a significant amount of time and energy focusing on workforce development around mental health. That's where we're seeing the most significant shortfall. So when it comes to our funding needs, that is where we're putting most of our priorities. Although we do have the need for our mental health prescriptions, the significant issue we're having is a simple manpower shortage. And getting more federal dollars in, state dollars in, local dollars in to expanding our ability to provide care is a critical component of this. So when we talk about the mental health crisis, the thing at the top of our wish list is always workforce development funding.
Thank you.
Thank you. Great question.
Any other questions, our board members? Anybody have any questions?
I do not.
All right. Any questions from our public? One member. Okay. Mayor, thank you for being here. Give our best regards. And keep us posted. You said April 1st. It does not look like you're going to make that deadline. Do you have any estimates on when they believe they'll hit that deadline?
So 2 days ago, the assembly released the preliminary details of their one house budget. There's some details I have, but not enough to have included in my PowerPoint. We're still waiting on all the details from the Senate's bill. Those three give us a framework of how the conversation is looking. The one thing that we did see in the Senate and the Assembly's versions is they both did include the 10% Medicaid increase. We're still assessing whether or not the pharmacy carve-out was included. I don't have a definitive answer on that from our finance team just yet, but the conversation is happening now. So we're putting that on everybody's radar that hopefully all three components of this are included in the final bill.
Thank you. Appreciate that.
Thank you, Xavier. Appreciate you inviting us. And you can always reach out if anything, because I'd love to be a regular guest if anything appropriate comes about.
Welcome you. We can bring you to Human Services when you're there. Wonderful. Okay, thank you very much. Now, there's an opportunity, as you just said, the April 1st deadline of the budget. And we have constantly requested in our statement of distribution budget requests. We'd love to have a discussion about where we feel about whether it's supporting what they're proposing in Albany. So how people think on that. Just don't all raise your hands at once. Would anyone want to consider discussing supporting their request? I'm asking a further discussion of it, or we would want to consider it, or we could not take a position at this time, but it's good to know and hear what people's thoughts are. Because if you see that our statement of district needs and budget requests, we've been very supportive of health and hospitals, our public hospitals, including Metropolitan. Yes.
Xavier, sorry to Jose, but I don't have any hands up for whatever reason. I can't find it.
Okay.
Yeah, are they looking for support from us tonight?
That was not a direct request, but it's whether or not we want to consider it.
Okay.
Nelson?
Okay.
Oh,
So,
sorry, Michelle.
yeah,
Right?
let me show.
John and Jess.
I think it's important for us to back a hospital that has, a hospital system that has done so much work, especially during the past few years where it was vital for our lives. For them to receive such a huge cut because of something that seemed like it might have been good on paper to begin with, but in reality, taking so much money out of the system that would make it seem like it would crumble a little bit, that I'm concerned that 123 is a lot. But it was hard for me to understand, is this 123 in a year, or is it 123 over a space of time? So annually. That's a lot. And how many buildings would be affected? How many, I mean, as Marissa was saying, the breakdown I was trying to do within my head at the time, and it seems like if it's okay, yeah, Metropolitan right on 96th Street, but then there's all over our city is New York Health and Hospitals. It's a huge institution. I think it would be an extreme detriment to our city for us to not make some sort of position on.
Thank you. Jessica?
I was gonna ask the same question that
Okay.
Jose asked.
Okay. David?
And this, what would be the proposed things that would be cut? We already know that we bought a lot of mental health care, typically adolescent mental health care. And that's something we try to get more information about. And this all happened during COVID, right? And we understand usage may have been less at that time. But you know, 1 out of every 100 is still schizophrenic in this society. So mental health hasn't decreased. And because of COVID, it's only increased. And that was a concern. So again, what are the services that will be most impacted that we will lose? Because metropolitan serves our community.
Thank you, David. Yes.
Well, just listening. You can hear?
No, I'm sorry, that's what I'm.
Oh, okay. Well, an immediate increase from 5% to 10% for health and hospitals is needed, and I would just say that 10% is really under the percentage that health and hospital should even be considered for, based on the work that they've done. The loss of the Medicaid beds and the mental health beds that have never been restored appropriately, the fact that this community lost La Clínica del Barrio in 2020, and that was moved by Gotham to another community board. And so we lost the services of a clinic that was specifically designed for our migrant and immigrant population at the time. And then brought up, I can't see how we wouldn't consider whether taking some type of a position tonight, based on the fact that the budgets are April 1st. We don't have that much time to comment. And the fact that, you know, switching from the pharmacy program to a pay for fee, where already Medicaid patients are only getting, health and hospitals are only getting reimbursed 2/3 of it. And so traditionally, especially metropolitan, is under-resourced. And generally, the state gives back monies to reimburse health and hospitals after it pays private hospitals. Because of that, our communities, all our communities that have health and hospitals are always under the gun in terms of trying to catch up with healthcare. So, you know, I just wanted to put out there that I would feel comfortable having a discussion and supporting if this committee after discussion feels that they'd like to take a position. I understand that this should be obviously the purview of health, right? Human services, definitely human services is a great committee that really looks at everything for the climate to home. So,
Yeah, I sent it to Marlene Tuesday, and she missed it.
so this might be something that Isaac.
Actually,
I'm sure we would have.
Right, so I'm thinking that Isaac can opine as, you know, as the chair. You know, I'm just throwing out some general comments that I would based on the discussion.
Yeah, strong. Oh, sorry, David.
I kind of want to just put an asterisk. We do know that we're supposed to have 1 to 2 seats of representation from this board sit on the cab. We haven't had that.
Yes, we do. We, Carlos Diaz is our member, this is there in 1 seat. According to, the question to sit there, huh?
Oh, that's two of them.
I thought so too.
It's,
We shoveled to them.
yeah,
Listen, again, would be good to also have what Carlos's input would be, because he's sitting in the open.
Yeah, I remember.
Right, so I thought
So Carlos Diaz is our member on there. We thought we had 2. The cab has stated that we have 1. We can circle back and advocate that also to one of our community board members, Joel Jones, is on the cab as well. So we have two people that are on there. So they were both there that legislative.
Just to ask that question, thank you, David, for bringing that up. Are those members that are on the tab reporting to Human Services, on Human Services, and are they reporting back to Human Services so that they're aware? If not, I would suggest that a report be done by anybody who is assigned to external boards, that they should be giving reports on a regular basis, at least to the full board or to the committee that it impacts. So Human Services should definitely be aware of everything that happens at that committee. if they are not an active member of that committee. Can we
All
make
right,
a
hold on,
motion?
raise your hand real quick. I think the second, yeah, go on, go
No,
on.
no, I was gonna, ask, should I reach out to Carla?
I'll connect you guys over. Yeah, I'll connect you over. Yeah, I'll connect you over email and, we can go on from there.
Is he still active on?
Yes, he has been attending. And I'll also introduce you, just as a side, just text me, remind me, Will Smith, who's the head of the Metropolitan Gap. There's also Will Lopez, who used to work for Ben Kalos, who's there, who's on the tech. And they're these are very sweet individuals. But yes, now.
Can we make a motion then support? Is that?
That was what I was gonna ask, so language we're using, would we be using some of this language from the summary here?
We could,
How do we?
we could take a position that we are supportive of the legislative request. We could keep it that simple, but if we agree as a body to that particular, what they presented, that we agree with the legislative carve outs, and then we will be able to just put that in letter form, such as the bullet points that are listed in the PowerPoint. So. Yes, Michelle.
Just to be on the opposite side, is there any points that we disagree with?
Good question. Are there?
Being like a hospital rules and everything.
Yeah, but I just wanted to make sure, because if we're gonna write a letter, and I don't want to all of a sudden like, wait a minute, I didn't like this part, I agree. I just want to make sure that we're on the same page.
And specifically with their,
I thought they were making a sort of lowball of what they actually needed. That was my concern.
do you mean like these points here, to setting aside 300 million capital?
That was my concern. I thought it was too low.
We can opt to say that we support, however, we would like to see more. That is correct, yeah, so we.
That was that was my biggest issue.
Okay, very good, Jess.
Just wondering if in that language, if we would just use it as an opportunity to point to our direct requests for help in human hospitals.
Yes.
Thank you. I think we should always reference that. I feel like that's how it's strong as body of writing with respect to the issue.
Yeah. Okay, good one. Let me take this. I don't know how you do it, Jess. Take a minute.
I do. Sorry.
Okay, so, all right, so. Reference. Okay. So what I've heard in the conversation, let me just, we're willing to support the request they're putting, but we would like to see more of an investment. In
Capital health funding. And we want to see more of an increase in. For hospitals, like 10%.
to the bullet points.
So maybe, yeah, this, yeah,
Okay,
these, the second two actually have numbers.
okay, so.
You know what's a better rate to raise by, I don't know what's a better, just propose an increase in more than what's there versus unproposed money.
There's at a minimum percent, 10%, but
10% or higher,
based on, yeah.
Mhm.
so that they don't go lower.
Inflation, projected rate. That would you be
Okay.
Any other questions, concern, Angel? Okay. All right, so I can't, to be sure, I can't make a motion, so I can entertain the motion. So who would like to this?
Motion to support our union like. Motion to support. These, specific bullet points.
Can we speak up for the?
Excuse me, oh, I'm sorry.
We're all addressing.
Sorry, I got a little too comfortable in the room, I forgot we were virtual. Specific language, sorry, motion to support, the legislators, recommendations, with these numbers, 10% increase being a minimum, with the request that it be increased even more than 10%. That's what capital health funding. 100 million being minimum, but I don't know how, we have this for motion.
Okay, let me
So
restate.
far, now we read,
Yeah.
we can find some,
Do you want me to restate?
Yes,
Yeah.
please.
Sorry, I might not say it exactly. Motion to support the legislation recommendations with the bullet points noted in the presentation, with the additional note that the requested minimums the community board believes are insufficient, and to point to our specific health and human services district needs and budget requests. As
Okay, so, yes,
We add the specific number, the specific bullet points to
I
emphasize
can
it.
read them out.
yeah, that's what I was gonna ask, are we going to, just say we support what's in the slides, or can we, I think it would probably be better than names and simply,
we can read them into the record if you would like, and we can state them, so, and then we can say we would actually make it more, what was said here, a higher increase on these.
On these two particular bullet items.
Okay, on the second two. Okay, great.
Yeah, the specific to Metropolitan was 3 million.
Okay.
That's not enough.
That's
It's
not-
not enough.
Not when they need 50 million to do an OR.
It's not enough.
Yeah, so that's, so. Okay, so is everyone clear on the motion? Correct, yeah,
I would
yes,
like to second that motion.
all right, please call the roll.
Jose Altamirano,
In favor.
Dan Brija, Jessica Elliott,
Yes.
David Giordano,
Yes.
John Green,
Aye.
Marissa Mack,
Yes.
Nelson Rama,
Yes.
Xavier Santiago,
Yes,
Isaac Scott.
Yeah.
Michelle Butcher Clement,
Yes.
the motion carries.
wonderful, thank you so much. Thank you for your patience, everyone, and thank you for being able to be nimble and pivot there. I think it's good to support our initiatives and budget requests and support our local hospitals. Okay, moving on, we have an update on the viaduct. And we have Joe O'Donnell from the MTA. Joe, are you still with us?
Yes, I am, everybody. How you doing tonight?
Good, good. All right, well, the floor is yours.
Thank you so much for having me. I think you've elevated Zishan Ott from our team to be able to share the presentation that we have for you guys tonight. I also have a couple.
Not quite yet. Now I can, yes.
Okay.
Thank you.
We also have a few other folks who will be speaking throughout the course of the presentation. So if when we pass it off to them, we can allow them their mic, that would be great. I'm not sure if they have the ability to unmute themselves, but it would be Mike Sheehan, Nick from the project team, Nick Almeida, and Alan Valerio from our public outreach team. So just FYI.
Sorry,
But
Joe,
thank-
who was the last one after Nick Almeida?
Alan Valerio.
I'll move him right now.
All right, thanks so much. And again, thanks everybody for having us tonight. Great to see you all in person. Well, I'm not literally there in person, but great to see you guys all in person together. That's a great sign of how far we've been progressing. We wanted to come to you tonight to speak a little bit about the Park Avenue Viaduct, give you a sense of where we are with this project. We have been, speaking with Community Board 11. Well, as far as you guys are concerned, I'm probably speaking to you way too often on all the projects and the various different things that we have going on in the area, but we've been communicating with CB11 on this project for quite some time as well. So now that we have the contractor on board and we're moving closer and closer to actual construction, we wanted to come to you and give you a sense of where we are on that. Next slide, Zishan. So just a sense of agenda going through this deck, a bit of introductions, which we did by default, a bit of project background, anticipated project scheduling and staging, some updates on our interactions with Urban Garden Center and on behalf of La Placita, what we've been doing lately for community outreach and engagement, and then obviously kicking it back to you all for any discussion or questions. Next slide. So just a bit of project background so that we're all speaking the same language. What is the Park Avenue Viaduct? The viaduct is an elevated steel structure which was built in 1893, that is, well, over 130 years ago. It carries 4 Metro North Railroad tracks above Park Avenue in East Harlem. 98% of all Metro North trains use the viaduct. 750 trains and 220,000 customers use the viaduct on a typical pre-COVID workday. There is 1.25 mile long structure that the viaduct encompasses, which includes 5 miles of track. The Park Avenue Viaduct, as you all know, especially living through the fire back in 2016, is the main artery that carries all riders to and from Grand Central from Harlem 125th Street. So it is presently a single point of failure and in much need of state of good repair work. With that, I'm going to turn it over to project CEO Mike Sheehan to walk you through a little bit about the project itself. Mike.
Thanks, Joe, and again, thank you everyone for inviting us for the time today. Real quick, we understand that the viaduct is important to Harlem and the community. As Joe mentioned, the viaduct is Harlem 125th Street Station is right in the middle of the Park Avenue Viaduct. It's very important to Metro North service. Over 5 million customers use the station typically every year. It's the Metro North's third busiest station right now, and we've done over $20 million in recent investments in the station. Next slide. Just want to highlight this. I know we're spending a lot of money on the structure itself, but we have done a lot of customer improvements to the art at 125th Street inside the station building, as well as the CSI initiative as well. So what is the project? As I mentioned, the Harlem 125th Street Station is right in the middle of the viaduct, which makes it even more challenging for us to do. But MTA C&D, which is the construction arm of the MTA at large, is going to replace major segments of the viaduct so we can maintain it in a state of good repair. As I mentioned, ensuring railroad service to the Harlem community is vitally important. And I'd just like to point out, this is not an expansion project. That there's 4 tracks in the viaduct today, and there will be 4 tracks on the viaduct when we're done with the project as well. We are not anticipating any schedule impacts to the Harlem service, either weekdays or weekends, or that includes all the different events that come through there as well. Next slide, please. So the first phase of the viaduct, and that's the phase we had just awarded a contract to Halmar for, is between 115th Street and 123rd Street above Park Avenue. 123rd Street is just south of the station platform area, and and those 8 blocks is where we're going to be working in for this project. So why now? As Joe mentioned, it's 130 years old. The 1800s it was built in. Structures don't just die of old age, though. There are signs of distress that the viaduct has been showing us. The current usage is well above the original design intent, and the viaduct must be maintained in a state of good repair. We're a public authority. We take public money. Public trusts us to maintain the public service. Just like to point out, though, we do routine inspections. We do regular and ongoing maintenance and repair work. So the structure is safe in its current state, but we can only keep this up for so long. So an extensive replacement is the best and cost-effective alternative. Next slide, please. So some of the benefits, as I mentioned, public safety to the public, safety to the railroad, everyone above and below the structure as well. Train service to the Harlem Station, into and out of Grand Central Terminal to serve the Bronx and all points north. This project will help to reduce noise and vibration levels in the community that the viaduct transverses. There will be a arts and design component of this project, which Alan will touch on a little bit later. As part of the project, the MTA signed its first ever public labor agreement with the BCTC, and part of that is to help include union jobs for the local community. We've been talking with DOT for a long time now about integrating some of their aspects of the project as well. There's tens of millions of dollars in disadvantage-based enterprise DBE contracts on this project. We've been doing a lot of community outreach and STEM program, which Alan's going to talk about a little bit later on. And the project does help to reduce greenhouse gases as it's continuing to do public transportation, and we are using sustainable materials where possible. Next slide, please. So if we go to the schedule here, and I'm going to turn over to Nick in a second, we just awarded a contract to Halmar International in December of 2022. So we're 2.5 months into our construction design build DB construction contract award. We are starting construction activity in the coming months, and then Nick's going to walk you through in detail then the construction, and he's going to talk about 3 stages. Stage A, where it's going to be all the foundation work. Stage B and stage C, where it's going to be replacing the bridge work as well. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Nick Altimator, again, who's from Halmar and is our project manager.
Good night, everyone. Next slide. I'm going to walk you through, as Mike said, some of the staging that you guys are going to see out there. So the substructure will kick off later this summer, so Q3 of 2023. Once the Urban Garden Center is relocated down to Lot 1, we will start the substructure work in the 2 Urban Garden Center lots. Those are lots 6 and 7, and the Q3 of 2023. From there, we will move up to the north end of the project, where currently the in between 122nd Street and 123rd, and then work our way south. La Placida is going to the construction will take place there in the Q3 of 24. We chose to do this last to impact that property for the least amount of time. So the construction process that you're going to see out there in every lot, we're going to close the lot, excavate out the existing pavement, install deep foundations. Then we're going to cast in place some substructure, which will be columns and column caps. We will restore the lot and then move the tenant back into the lot. Next slide. So this is our typical work zone that you're going to see while we do the substructure work from Q3 of 23 to Q3 or Q2 of 24. We're going to take the parking lanes, move traffic to the parking lanes on both northbound and southbound Park Avenue. Emergency access will be maintained at all times. The sidewalks are going to be fully open at all times, and the mobilization will start the end of March, early April of 23. And like I said before, the substructure construction is anticipated to kick off in Q3 of 23 and be wrapped up the beginning of Q3 of 2024. The only special case that we have in substructure construction is at 116th Street. That's where there's an existing center pier. Eastbound traffic will remain 2 lanes. Westbound traffic will be limited to 1 lane. And again, sidewalks will be fully open. Emergency access will be maintained at all times. And this configuration will last for about 2 months. Next slide. So now we're gonna get into the spring of 24, which will be the start of the superstructure replacement. It's the eastern side of the viaduct. The superstructure is gonna be replaced over the weekends. There won't be any impact to the Metro North schedules, no impacts during the weekdays. So when we are replacing the east side of the viaduct, the southbound traffic will remain open. The parking lane will be removed in the adjacent span replacement. Northbound traffic will be detoured around our work area. We are currently having extensive ongoing conversations with New York City DOT, FDNY, and New York City Police. The sidewalks are going to remain fully open. FDNY and New York City Police will have access through the work area to provide emergency services. Next slide. Stage C superstructure. This will start the spring of 25, finish the fall of 25. It's going to be a mirror image, but flipped of stage B superstructure replacement. So in this case, northbound traffic will remain open. Southbound traffic will be detoured around our work zones. Sidewalks north and southbound will remain open. And then again, we'll have ongoing coordination with New York City DOT, FDNY, and New York City Police. Next slide. So here's a blown up view of our typical work zone for stage B. Stage C would be similar but flipped. Here you can see in red the viaduct's closed. The parking lot underneath the viaduct where the spans are going to get replaced, the bridge will be closed. Here you can see southbound traffic will be kicked over to the parking lanes, and you can see both sidewalks in the green are going to remain open. So we have required clear zones that are established for FDNY for emergency services. They're going to be maintained during the construction, and we'll have a staging area on each side of our weekend outage to replace the bridge adjacent to our work zone. And again, stage B, which will be the east spans, the duration will be from Q2 of 24 through the summer. And then stage C, which will be the west spans, will be start Q2 of 25 and be wrapped up by Q4 of 2025. So we're gonna replace the structure. It's called with a gantry. It's very safe. It allows trains to run underneath it. So the yellow piece of equipment you see here, this is a very typical for a weekend replacement. The gantry is going to be used to disassemble the old bridge, put on trucks, taken out of the work site, And then the new bridge units that were staged on each side of the work zone will be lifted up, set into place until we achieve the required number of spans in the weekend. Next slide. So this is a cross-section of the gantry showing where it will reside in Park Avenue Viaduct and in Park Avenue. You can see here this configuration would actually show stage C, which is replacing of the west side bridge units. You can see on the right-hand side of the screen that traffic is unimpeded going northbound in the parking lane. You can see both sidewalks remain open. Construction fencing is erected around the perimeter to keep the public out of the work zone and safe. And the units you can see are staged on the street and they will be lifted into place. Next slide. And here I'm gonna show you a video of what a typical weekend operation.
I was gonna try to hang up and like block it. Oh my god, why is this show calling me right now? Why? How is it?
Thanks, Nick. And as Nick mentioned, I believe he mentioned, this was a very successful best practice taken from Nick's work over on Long Island Third Track. So this is means and methods that we've used elsewhere too. So to do these bridge replacements. So Nick's a pro at this, and we're looking forward to being able to deliver this project safely, effectively, and efficiently for the folks in East Harlem as well as Metro North. And one of the things that we've been very focused on, as well as Community Board 11 and the stakeholders in the community we've been very focused on, is what's going to happen to the folks underneath the Park Avenue Viaduct, namely Urban Garden Center and La Placita. We've been actively engaged with both parties, more so in a direct one-on-one relationship with Urban Garden Center, because as Nick mentioned, we're going to be moving them first. So we've been working with them to identify what their needs would be as they move their retail operations from what presently comprises Lot 6 to Lot 1. As a matter of fact, as recently as today, we met with Dimitri and EDC to go over some plans and some layouts of what the new retail establishment in Lot 1 will look like. There's also an offsite location where we will be moving his Lot 7, which is more of his back of the house and storage operations. Those will be going offsite, but his main operations, the day-to-day operations, will be moving down to Lot 1. So the contractor, the MTA, and the city have been working together to prepare Lot 1 in consultation with UGC. As mentioned, we're going to start that move in Q2 of 2023. We've also been working collaboratively with the city on an offsite location within the community, in consultation with UGC for that Lot 7 storage location. Again, that'll be moved in Q2 of 2023. Both of these changes will be in place for the start of, for the duration of construction. As Nick mentioned, once operations get going on the substructure and then ultimately transitioning to the superstructure, it's going to move from north to south and then switch over to the west side and go south to north. So until we're complete with both sides above, we're not going to be able to move Urban Garden Center back in, so that they will be in their temporary location through the entirety of construction. Next slide. As far as La Placita goes, also, a big consideration for us because of its importance to the community. As Nick mentioned, we are going to start at the north and move to the south, then swing around and move from the south back up to the north, so that we are only in the area of La Placita for the minimal amount of time necessary. La Placita is presently Lot 5 underneath the viaduct between East 115th and 106th Streets. It's not anticipated that we would get to that area and impact La Placita's operations until Q2 of 2024. This will go through Q3 of 2025. The phasing was developed again with the idea to minimize disruption of La Placita's operations. Halmar was selected specifically. One of the reasons why they were selected was because they proposed the shortest temporary closure period from all of the proposals we received. So the team is working with EDC to review locations within the community to move La Placita on a temporary basis. And after the contractor completes their work in 2025, La Placita will be returned to their existing location with the restored aesthetics and functionality. Next slide. At this point, I'm going to turn it over to Alan, who is the newest member of our community engagement team, to speak with you a little bit about some of the activities that we've been engaged in over the last several months and things that we're looking to do as we move forward. So Alan.
All right, good evening. Thank you, Joe. Good evening, Community Board 11. My name is Alan Valerio, and I will be serving as the Construction Community Liaison for the Park Avenue Viaduct project. I will serve as the main point of contact for the public at large. As we mentioned earlier in the presentation, part of the viaduct, we will include a permanent art installation at 116th Street. Late last year, we held an open call for artists to submit samples of their work, and a professional panel with input from the community board and local elected officials will select the winning artists, and they will create a work, and their work will be added to the viaduct. As part of our stakeholder engagement, we've created a long process which has manifested into quarterly stakeholder advisory meetings that we're going to continue to have. And we're going to continue to email newsletters. We are doing pop-up locations at different areas around the community, and subway stations and Metro North stations, and wherever you might feel like you would like to see one. We've also, some of the pictures you see here are from our STEM programming at schools. Essentially, some of us on our team come out and we hold a STEM day with kids at local schools. We build bridges with them, as you can see in the picture over there with a train on that bridge. And we teach the importance of the STEM programs. And again, like I said, I will be the dedicated construction community liaison, and we will be issuing timely construction notifications whenever there are any major movement in the project, if there's a street closure or something that the community needs to know immediately. And we will maintain a project email and hotline. So these photos are from some of our previous stakeholder outreach. We've held meetings, as you see from this timeline, all the way back to Q1 in 2020, with different elected officials, different stakeholder meetings. We've held meetings before with Community Board 11, your community board, and we've, in the past have also held the quarterly stakeholder committee meetings that we're going to continue to hold. And as I mentioned, we're going to have, regular informational meetings with NYPD, with DOT, with elected officials, with any other city agency and state agencies that has a vested interest in this project. And as we mentioned before, if there are pop-up or STEM events that you think we would be best for us to come out to, we'd love to hear it from you guys. You guys are the community board, your community best. Because we've been able to have outreach for a very long period of time, we've been able to implement design decisions from community suggestions, such as a lighter color viaduct. We understand that, the older colors and the older paints that they used for the viaducts in the past don't really leave like a bright vision or view of the viaduct. There's going to be improved lighting underneath the viaduct. We're going to increase pedestrian safety. We know how important it is to ensure that we have a city that's safe for pedestrians in every part of the city. So we're going to ensure that there's an increased pedestrian safety, and also open columns. And most importantly, we're going to reduce the viaduct noise and vibrations. Of course, as we mentioned before, one of our main objectives is to minimize temporary disruptions to La Placita and compatibility with La Placita. And we're doing our best to maximize visibility of local businesses during construction. And we're reducing air quality impacts and noise during construction as well. So as part of this project, we're going to be implementing a good neighbor initiative. The MTA will be overseeing this. And essentially, the contractor will be graded on different factors to ensure that they're doing a good job and continue to do a good job in the community, such as pedestrian environment and livability. Site upkeep, it's very important that they have a clean work site for themselves, for the safety of themselves, but also for the safety of everyone in the community, everyone that's going to be around the viaduct on an everyday basis. And maintenance of additional site elements and communications. After this presentation, there will be a question and answer session. So if there are other factors that you would like to see monitored in this program, please share it with us. Again, my name is Alan Valerio. I'm the construction community liaison. I'm also a native New Yorker and a bilingual Spanish speaker. As you can see here, we have the project email, which is pav@mtacd.org, and the project hotline. And as you can see there, there's a link to the website, to the MTA website, where you could get some more information. Once again, feel free to share the project contact information with the public at large and your community board members. And for those who are continue to contact Joe and Andy Butter of MTA as well. Thank you for having us, and I'll turn it back to Joe for.
Well, thank you very much. Actually, we're going to kick it back to Angel and Xavier now to facilitate any questions that there might be or comments.
Great, thank you so much, Joe and team. Really appreciate it. Love that animation. Any questions from the board? Yes, Jessica.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you for the presentation. I appreciate all the information, but I think some of the responses to the community concerns are just a little bit vague. So hoping to get a little bit of clarity. I have 3 questions. I'm sorry. I'll make them quick. You mentioned the noise and vibration mitigation methods. What specifically are you doing to mitigate noise and vibration, and will that impact any areas outside of the project area? Specifically, I'm thinking about PS 106 and 108 on 108th Street. Has trouble teaching their elementary students because of the noise. My first question.
So in terms of the vibrations, the way the foundations are constructed right now, that they're shallow and they spread all the train vibrations across. We're going to use deep foundations, which are drilled in piles, which bring the vibrations a lot further down into bedrock. So we're not expecting it to be that spread out as much. For noise, we are installing a new walkway along the viaduct, which will include noise panels, which will help contain the sound within the viaduct envelope and push it upwards instead of just directly outwards. And the new strata will be made of concrete substructures, which will help as it's a bigger structure. It has more mass to it, which is going to help dampen the noise and vibrations as well.
So just to be clear, the current noise and vibration levels everywhere outside of the project area will remain.
Sorry, can you repeat that?
To be clear, the noise and vibration levels outside of the specific project area will remain the same.
You're talking about post-project or during the actual execution of the work?
Post-project.
No, so post-project, the anticipation is that because it's a new modern structure and not, for lack of a better word, a rickety 100 to 30-year-old creaky structure, there will be, organic noise reductions as part of the new technology that's implemented to replace the viaduct. It's not going to be completely silent. There's still, and Mike can talk probably a little bit more articulately about it than I, it's still metal on metal with trains breaking on metal rails and things of that nature. And that's what those noise reduction panels at the viaduct level are designed to help mitigate against. But the structure itself is going to be, there's going to be less moving parts, less, noise generated from the older structure itself because of the new technology.
Great, thank you so much. Is it okay if I ask?
Yes, go ahead.
Okay, the second question is, there were a lot of trucks shown in the video that you played, and you mentioned sustainability and that you will be mitigating air pollution. The specific note was monitoring, but what happens after monitoring? At what point does it become a problem, and what are the actions that the MTA would take for air pollution?
So the contractor will be monitoring the noise and air quality within the city code on that, and we'll be monitoring that as well. The video, there was eight trucks or so over the course of 24 hours or 48 hours.
But what happens after monitoring?
Well, so if we find that there's elevated levels, the contractor stops works, and there's various ways that they can propose to mitigate those levels.
Yeah, there were a lot of trucks, conceptually there, but and it is literally a lot of trucks. But what happens is a couple things happen. We do have a no idling policy, for equipment and vehicles associated with our project. So the trucks will be queued up and ready to go, and then only move when it's time for them to go pick up their load or drop off their load. And then similarly, we are shutting down roughly, I think it is, Nick and Mike, you can correct me if I'm wrong, approximately a rolling 2-block area while we do this work, so that the trucks can get in and get out. They're not going to be sitting there waiting, stuck in traffic and creating, a lot of extra emissions. They're going to get in, get out.
Great, thank you. And the last question is, what is the final answer on where the DSNY trucks that are underneath the Metro North going to be during these projects?
So the DSNY trucks are north of the station, and that's our phase 2 area. So they're not going to be affected in this project, but I will say, when we get to that area, the DSMY trucks, we committed to the city, that the DSMY trucks will not be moved to the street.
Great, thank you.
All right, Michelle.
Hi, thank you for your presentation. This has more to, also with the air quality. I'm curious to find out when the structure is being removed and put onto the truck, a lot of, I would think, debris and sediment and whatever has collected over the 100 and so years would be going someplace, falling down. How is that air quality? What would happen with those pollutants? Those particles, are they going to be collected in a fashion so that they don't spread out throughout the community, or what will happen to that?
Yeah, good question. Part of the contractor scheme is to take as big as pieces as possible and move them out of the area, and then they're going to move them to a separate offsite location and then break them down further. But in terms of they will have pieces to break to cut the pieces, and they do monitor the air quality. There are specific environmental precautions that the contractor takes to make sure that the community is protected, and also the workers that are doing the work are also protected as well. And we will have the MC does have a physical presence on site and an engineering staff on site to make sure that the contractor is following the correct environmental plans as well.
So not everyone that's going to be walking by on the sidewalk would have like a mask or something on covering themselves or covering their hair. There's a lot of dust particles would be around. I want to know this, are there any specific ways that the dust levels will be mitigated at that point?
You want me to answer, Mike?
Yeah, you can elaborate further. Yes, thank you.
Yeah, so we're gonna use water suppression, right, for any cutting, right? So water is a required method by OSHA for our workers' health. So when we saw cut or demo concrete, we'll have active water suppression that will keep the dust contained to that little area, right? It does not travel more than a couple feet from where we're cutting or breaking concrete.
Thank you, Michelle. Nelsie, you had a question.
Thank you so much. Joe, thank you. Thank you all for your presentation. I have two questions as a follow-up to that question that Michelle asked, and we mentioned about water. That wasn't you, Joe, specifically. So in terms of, if you could just take 30 seconds and explain, you're using water to mitigate the dust. So is it like you have a vat that collects this water? Is this water left, does it run from the project site, like into any drainage or anything like that? Or is that strictly mitigated at the site with whatever drums or tools that you actually have?
So when we talk about water, it's not like a fire hose, it's more of a mist. We're required to clean up any of the slurry that will come down onto the restored lot. That lot is won't have the final course of asphalt on it, so it'll be 2 inches lower than current Park Avenue until this superstructure is replaced. So any of the slurry is going to be actively cleaned up by laborers. It will never leave and get into Park Avenue and get into the existing drainage system.
Thank you so much. And then a follow-up question unrelated to that is La Placita. Now, millions of dollars was put into La Placita through a community outreach plan and investment through the previous speaker, well, past speaker, Melissa Markey, ready for that. In terms of you, in your presentation, it was mentioned restored aesthetics and functionality, and I know that you all have been meeting with the Friends of La Marqueta group and others and EDC. I'm just curious as to what that means, in terms of your presentation. Are you saying that it will be restored the way it is now, or are you looking to, with the Friends of La Marqueta and community suggestion, improving it? Because right now, the space can be used, but there's a lot of noise. The electricity is not all it should be. There's a host of problems with that open area. And I was wondering if there was thought, other than what's been mentioned at the meetings, to potentially improve that space that has not been publicly discussed.
So Mike, I don't know if you wanted to touch on that, but we are actively meeting with EDC to go over plans for the viaduct, for La Placita. You know, what that's going to look like in terms of you know, some of the interior configuration as it presently exists, and some of the aesthetic improvements that could be there. We are required by contract to restore the La Placita in kind, so it's not going to be any worse than the way we found it. But we are, you know, we've been hearing from folks as to some of the improvements they would like to see, but we're not there yet as far as you know, any future plans on improvements. Correct, Mike?
Thank you, Jill.
Thank you. Marissa, you have a question?
Yeah, just quickly, I just want to say thank you. You guys have been very visible and have consistently come to both the general board meeting and then also the economic development and culture committee meeting. So thank you for your continuous follow-up and information. I did actually just want to touch on what Nilsa said about La Placita, and if there is an opportunity for people to kind of weigh in on what it could look like and what it could be. And actually just experiencing recently that the birds like right underneath there have been, you know, an issue and a problem. So as you're building it out, obviously, and as you're talking to EDC, it might be beneficial. And of course, you don't want to open it completely up, right? But maybe to get some additional ideas from people in the community about what could make it more effective and more impactful. So just throwing that out there as an option for you as you work through what it looks like for the future. And then just a quick question about the Good Neighbor Initiative. So what happens once the construction company gets the score? Like, is that shown anywhere? Is that shared with anyone? Like, it's good that you guys are doing it, right? Because then it gives some sort of incentive for the, you know, construction company to continue to do a good job, but then where is that kind of reported, or who does that go to? It's only as effective as, you know, the consequences of that report. So what's done after you guys kind of give them a score?
Yep. So, great question. I'm going to turn over to Zishan in a second to explain the program a little bit in detail, but you know, money talks. So if the contractor scores poorly, they'll have financial hits. So it's a real program. There's real money involved. There's a real financial incentive for them to, you know, keep the community nice. But Zishan, do you want to explain the program?
Yeah, absolutely. So we anticipate releasing like a scorecard of some kind on a quarterly basis that shows how they rated. We want to put that like on our website and our newsletters, so it'll be completely public. We want people to see that. Additionally, any factors that they're graded poorly on, or that they're not meeting our expectations on, we expect them to immediately work on correcting that as well. So it's not like we're just, you know, waiting around until the next financial incentive period comes again. We want them to respond to those issues immediately and work with us on correcting them as they come up. And again, we would love suggestions on specific factors you're concerned about, or things that you want to make sure we're monitoring in that program, because we want to make sure that we're being responsive to community needs and concerns.
Okay, thank you.
Zishan, just following up on Marissa's question, the quarterly report, they're going to be published where? On the project website?
Yeah, so we anticipate putting them on the project website, and then we'll also probably have them in our quarterly newsletter that goes out. The schedules might align a little funny right now, so we'll figure that out as we get a little closer to July, but we'll kind of anticipate the first one kicking off closer to that period.
Yeah, it
Thank-
wouldn't be difficult if we needed to, Angel, to send out a blast, a separate blast, separate from the newsletter, just to make
Mhm.
sure that we're, reporting outwardly, so.
Thank you.
Thank you. No other questions? Okay, thank you very much, Joe, for being here and being front facing and involved with us.
Thanks, everybody. Appreciate the time.
Have a good rest of your evening.
On the bottom of
Okay. Okay, sorry, that's about 8:11. Thank you everyone for your patience. It's a very valuable update for us. A lot of great questions. Thanks, Isaac. Is that a water suppression video right there?
Yeah.
Would you share that?
Yeah, I can.
That'd be awesome. Really cool to kind of see what the work is, so we get a better idea and grasp it before it actually is initiated. Okay, next we have review of the draft agenda for upcoming full board meeting. Before we jump in, I just want to say we had our normal annual call with the application process to get an update on things. And Tricia and Porphyria were very complimentary on how we conduct our meetings. We've been getting a lot of notice, and they've actually been preferring our script. Thank you, Angel, and staff for that work that we've improved in all that document. The way we are very efficient in the conduct, people get to speak, because again, we are able to get through everything very rapidly. She did register that Porphyria as well, and they actually refer our model to other community boards, which is really kind of complimentary. I think, Marissa, you were sharing with me that you've heard good feedback as well, right?
No, I've heard that our website is great, and that also in terms of our weekly informational updates, and information being shared, that other people get that information. You guys should be applauded for that.
Yeah.
I want to also add that, thank you, Xavier, for giving me the floor, that I also heard good things from Queens Community about Community Board 11. What's this living?
Yes, Scott.
And Marlene is not in, but I just want to thank you. Sound like an idiot.
Yeah, so I just wanted to share that. We had a chair get together, which I'll talk a little bit more full board in my chair report, but we hosted the very first one back since COVID, and Nilsa used to get to the get-togethers, especially uptown. And we have a couple new chairs that are coming on. And again, hearing that from Queens, I've also gotten compliments from Queens. So, that's with the spirit and that energy of positivity that I think we move forward. And we'll now go through the draft agenda. Part of this is so we're aware of it. We're not just reading it as we land in, the virtual space. So all this is pretty standard public session. We've been doing a pretty decent job. Every month when you see me moving my hand around, it's because I'm actually, when that timer goes past 3 minutes, I'm actually blocking the continued question. So we're trying to be a little bit more direct and recommending succinctness. So we'll keep improving on that, but we've been dropping down about 10 to 12% every month, which is nice for that. Business section, all this is pretty standard. Executive, obviously that'll get changed with the one item we just voted on. Second Avenue Subway Task Force, we did not take a position, we just had updates. We also are branching out to other people and other groups for the actual station stops. So that will be a very brief summary update from that. So very succinct. License and permits, Dan, would you want to spend real quick?
I think this one will be through,
Okay, so we'll read that in. And again, these are pretty simple. So we'll, again, like we've been doing, we'll be bundling them. So now with environment, open space and parks, Jess.
I'll just do a, quick recap of the.
Okay, great. Housing.
Nothing like happened. So the thing we didn't have any, so we had discussions on a couple of topics, and it was basically my description of the we'll probably.
Okay. All All right, one little note on that with housing is that the Riverton, which is often the one way up north, we don't get much love up there. I just got an email because I was at the 25th precinct council meeting last night and met one of the, I think the secretary of one of them, and Diane Collier lives up there, so Russell Schuler. I think going on and getting, and we talked about doing a CCOP visit as well. I'm just trying to get us back out into tenant associations. They really appreciate when they see us at public events. So let's keep pushing that forward. Yes, Amy.
Next month's housing committee meeting will have NYCHA is going to be attending to speak about, yeah, they're going to be speaking about PACT and RAD. There's been conversation at the committee meetings. We felt that there was a need for more education amongst the committee members with regards to the plans for PACT and RAD. There's been a lot of stuff out there, but also a lot of confusion. So we figured we'd bring in the source to come and provide some clarity and respond to some questions.
Wonderful, thank you. They did present over at CCOP last month. It was very excellent.
RAD.
Huh?
Is it PAC and RAD?
So it RAD is the federal program and NYCHA calls it PACT.
Okay.
You got the trust with I think that's for the developments that are federally funded. And they said that, and from what I understand, since a member of Diane Ayala's staff was at this one meeting, they said that that's going to be a small thing, and it most likely will not affect any developments here in Charlotte, because they only want to put 2,700 apartments in the program. They say it will like to a large development and a smaller one. So, but which ones it will be is the main thing.
So thank you. Again. You have a question? Yes, when they initially started rolling out the program, and thank you, Angel, I'm glad to know they're coming. We had taken a tour in the Bronx pre-COVID. I think you went along as well,
Right.
and to see what the conversion looks like. Much of this falls into place because during the 60s and 70s, a lot of the tenements were absorbed into the NYCHA portfolio. And this is a way of trying to get them the desperate repairs they need because the funding has been decreasing at HUD. So again, that's why we have the right for the congressional representatives. Thank you. Land use.
If I could just ask,
Yes.
I know we were
Sorry, I
going
missed
to
that.
strike the first portion of this motion.
Yep.
When and where does that happen?
So at the land use committee, they passed a motion with 4 conditions. The first condition was they were seeking a copy of a letter of intent that the applicant subsequently provided. So the first condition is struck. What you're seeing here on the draft agenda reflects that change.
Okay.
But important to mention it here because there may be a question, in case there are any questions from members of the committee that aren't here this evening, seeing that one condition removed because it's been met.
Okay, so
Yep.
a little note.
Which one of the?
It's not on there because it was already. It was the one for my board.
Okay, public safety and transportation, Jose. So Jose still with us?
He is on the call now.
Here I am. Having some technical difficulties. How can I help you?
We're going over the agenda for our full board.
All right, so again, how can I help you? I don't, Michelle, did we have any, I was in the meeting for half of it and then I went through airport security and lost it.
We did not have any.
I don't, yeah.
However, we did have requests that were made. But because we do the process of pondering and processing the first month and then the next month, we actually take it as an action item. We table everything until the following month.
So all our voting will be for next month as we follow our procedure to make sure that everyone's kind of aware. I think the main one would be the bus stop for the tour bus, which I think is a great idea. And apparently the museums where the bus stop will be, they also think it's a great idea, which is El Museo and the other one. They gave letters of support. I know there were some questions, but I was not part of the conversation, so we will bring that up in next month's agenda and hopefully take a positive stand on it. Last time we denied it, mainly because they did not come present. It was just a DOT request. This time they did come present. There were still a lot of questions about how come we don't stop at 110th or how come we don't stop at 116th. And I think a lot of the focus really is that this isn't a public bus. This is a tour bus and tourists want to go, you know, certain places. And I think they're targeting the museum, which makes kind of absolute sense. And this would be the very first stop for East Harlem that we have for this kind of tour bus, instead of them kind of just driving through, because they already drive through our neighborhood. They kind of go through the Upper West Side, come around the park, come back down. So it's not like it's more traffic or less traffic or how long they're going to be there. They're already going through there. It's just that they're not stopping in our community. Other than that, Michelle, do you have anything else?
Well, they have the 5G discussion that for an extended period of time.
Oh, that thing.
There were people that the presenters were mostly good, except there was a little bit of agitation between the presenters.
Yeah, I finished it.
Don't go anywhere. Were and the public that wanted to discuss it. And so that anything would not be said, oh, well, I didn't have my say. People had their say in a calm fashion, and it ended that it will be discussed after people are able to process it, and it will be voted on how we feel about it, to give an advisory letter or not the following month.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
That's helpful.
We did have another speaker who wanted information and space to be able to have an after-school program for youth that are at risk, and he basically just wants space. And if we can suggest any spaces for him. He wants more than space, but space was the primary.
No, he presented to us this week.
Oh, okay.
Yes, right.
That's not one, a lot more than space.
Yes.
Well, for us, he was, talking about a safe space. And I know that he was gonna come to you after that.
He said he's gonna come to all of us. And all of the boards.
Okay.
Parks presented on faith, well, not Parks, but Jana from Parks presented at Echo Dev.
Yeah.
And she said they were safe.
Yeah, and actually during our meeting, Rosa has made some space available for them to begin to actually do something. And Xavier's gonna attend one of his sessions that he's doing in one of the schools, because there was some concerns raised. There were some questions of how he also presented during the meeting himself. Yeah, Dr. Kai Smith, he has done work in the community before. He's part of an event we did at Children's Aid with Gail Brewer around youth violence in the community. John was in one of the pictures that they had shown in his display of the work. There's something about real what he wants to do. He's from this community. He's talked honestly about how growing up, he self-harmed this community and wants to give back. Some people thought he was a little strong, even arrogant at times to a point. But I think, he has a message and he's working towards a goal. And he's probably got more success than many of us out here as well in his work, from some of what I've seen and what some of the other members know personally. mentioned in the meeting as well. And others were. But, you know, again, I think he asked for a lot. And it's usually one of the things where we say, okay, you know, maybe we need to give that month as Jose always does in his committee. And he said, yeah, we'll wait. Don't rush to give me anything. Come see what I do.
That's, I mean, that's what I thought. He was very strong and,
Yeah.
you know, he just wanted to get the message out.
How did he harm the community? What did he-
Oh, he did a lot. He did a lot.
He openly said it's public forum. He said, you know, he was youth, grew up in Washington houses, sold drugs, hustled drugs, went and bought drugs, brought guns back to the city and sold guns. And, you know, he put it out there. So it's not, and you know, you respect that from the point where you identify what you've done to a community, you want to make a difference.
Okay.
But, you know, again, I think sometimes, and I've had learned this, because I'm passionate, I'm strong, right? That
No.
the message sometimes gets lost in how we present, right? And I think, you know, some certain words trigger certain things for people, and he said some of those trigger words. And, you know, I was going back and forth with one member, I won't put their name out there, you know, I don't sense that that's what he means when he says these triggered words, that, you know, in our society, it's like, you've gone so far to one side, you can't be on the other, vice versa, you know, and yeah, so.
No, thank you for sharing that, David. Thank you. Nilsa had her hand raised, and then I'll come back to you.
I'm sorry, just because Melissa and I both look like a little confused. What organization is this?
It's graphics,
Graphic.
yes, and what he does is he, again, goes into communities, he works with after school or food specifically to offer a program, and what he said, and this is where people got it.
Yeah, that's what.
He goes after the kids, and he targets them, and he targets the kids, because when a kid pulls a gun out and shoots somebody, you may not be the target, but you may be the one killed. So, you know, there's a message, but again, certain words sometimes trigger certain things.
And you wanted what, a letter of.
Guys,
Yeah, John.
sorry.
This not my committee yet, you know.
To piggyback on what they said, as I did the party brother once said, never be concerned about the bullet with the name. You look like the one that said you be concerned. And that happened a lot, that happened too much. Okay, you're gonna say these.
All right, Nilsa, you had a follow-up, and I'm gonna go back
No,
to Michelle.
I was just wondering what did you want, because usually providers, they'll come to other providers, like they'll come to me.
He wants connection, he wants space, as he said, he
Okay.
wants connection.
Okay.
He wants us to help bridge a gap, so he eventually gets not contract funding, but gets funding to operate this as
That's actually like a statewide program essentially. Yeah, see, ultimately, we would like for his program to be applied on a statewide level. So him going to all the community boards in New York City to get their support, he wants that under his belt so that he can, bring it up to whichever government.
What he also said was, if y'all don't give it to me, that's all right, that's not stopping me.
Right.
I'm gonna go out tomorrow and do the same job I'm doing with or without you.
Right, correct.
One mic.
Guys, I just want to remind you that please raise your hands, because the mic will get confused, and the owl's gonna do this thing where it spins around, which is cool. Yeah, which will lead to a very hysterical edit. Michelle, and then I'll come to you, Isaac.
And I do the raise hand for
Thank
everyone.
you. Go, Michelle. Go with yours.
He has a strong personality. That is a given. However, he really emphasized that because he did the most harm where he grew up, he thought it was extremely important to get some sort of backing from the place that he grew up and harmed. And that's what he wanted the most. Yes, baby, yes, outreach, yes, all of the other things that he asked for, but most importantly, he wanted something from his own community,
Thank you. Isaac.
Specifically, it was a letter of support from community for 11. And just based on my understanding of how he was explaining the funding, he's a vendor for DOE that gets the contract, but he wants to get a grant. I don't think they've been funded in the capacity. So the letter of support would go to help the application for DOE. So that's what I wanted to ask you guys, and we talked to you about this, because like drafting a letter, it sounds like it's really just like something like, to the extent of, CB11 support this program, to be given the opportunity to expand, to be, we did it like that. Something like that. Ooh, like, that's what it sounds like.
Yeah.
That's really helpful. I've got the flyer. I'm going to send it to all of you if you want to join me. You're available. Come out. Okay. Great, thank you. I'm just going to keep us moving along because I know some people have a hard out. Human services.
I'll be fast too. I gave a presentation on stigma and how it has an adverse effect on folks who may be going through recovery. I also spoke to how this is a popular attitude on CB11 that really is just in some ways offensive. It doesn't represent the people who actually are living and dealing with drug addiction in our community. So long story short, I just spoke on behalf of them being a product of that. I expressed some lived experience, a lot of lived experience, but also professional experience knowledge, and some research on that topic. So I'll take a few minutes to just share a little bit about that to the larger community. I mean, to the full board, just so it's said. But outside of that, we had the motion. It was tabled last month, but we are back this month with it. The chair encouraged us to take a position on Odyssey House, but the committee decided to stay with our letter of acknowledgement. And I think the reason we want to do that is because we don't want to go ahead and just say we support it yet. We acknowledge they had to come before us. They need to, they came before us. They actually invited me to Odyssey House. I went to the space. It was very open, transparent about what they're trying to do. Also, what they're trying to do. They are expanding their services to offer methods in treatment in the facility for their residents. The residents no longer have to leave the residence to go to Mount Sinai. So this is to win in a lot of ways, with respect to what we've been hearing the community concerns on, especially with traffic. And they also have similar concerns with respect to people leaving the facility and becoming vulnerable to people who may be preying on them. So this seems like a good thing all around, but they only needed a letter of acknowledgement for that, so we need to go and do more than that. Let's give them a letter of acknowledgement. And they have launched it. It's going to be in the next 12 months. They can come back before us and let us know, give us some updates. We'll have some pertinent questions for them. And then from there, if it's going good and it's actually doing what it's supposed to do, then I really will put another support behind it and advocate for that. But I think yeah, that's the position we'll take specifically on Odyssey House right now. But we did myself, and I believe everyone else on our committee does agree that we should move towards taking a position. I think we need to take a position on every single thing so quickly. So some things like this, I think we should just, because there's no need to stand behind it or to stand against it at the moment. It is actually a solution, something we should support. But let's see, where it goes. To see how Odyssey maintains the relationship they had. They did, I remember the last executive meeting, we stated that Odyssey House had a bad rap in the past. They haven't shown me that, so I really don't like to hold people to the past, but let's see how they continue with us. And, we can then decide to put a motion of support behind what they've done, because that could serve as a model for other treatment centers to try to go in that direction to, provide in-house services to limit the traffic of folks. So that's the motion that we have on the table. It's a letter of acknowledgement to Odyssey House regarding their application. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you very much. Again, we do encourage intentional action, and thank you for registering that. I think it's very important for us, and also to have the pregnant pause where you're like, okay, we're going to go assess, review, verify, come back, and it gives us the opportunity. But as Angel had sent an email and said, like, we got to do the due diligence, and that's why you have a whole committee, is because they can go out there. I did reach out to Odyssey House. They haven't gone back. I want to take a tour again because I found my 15 when I came back. To that note, at the 25th precinct, Chipobe, a lot of high figureheads there, and I would recommend everyone at least try to make a community precinct council meeting. 2 members of Odyssey House were there. and said one of the big things they're struggling with is that a lot of their participants or clients or patients, they are having issues on 124th Street. And that's where they get, I forget the language they use, but they said that people are all constantly over there asking if they want a taste. First taste is free. And he says, they asked the police, we need your help to get those people out of the way. So I think there's an opportunity for us all to lean in and move together towards positive solutions.
So if they come to that point, is maybe I was talking to a committee member from over work and the shares a lot of the concern and that was the conversation whether the accountability for we want to ensure that the services and they're doing it in a safe way and ensuring that to bear within their power of being able to enforce things. They're ensuring that their facility is good, but a few blocks away or around the corner should be there. Really does need to be the presence of the police. If that will deter, then it has to be done. It can't all fall back on the organizations because they don't, unless they have a private security, then we can do that. Because it's realistically you can't. I mean, you know what I mean? Like I think we have to be fair with how we're placing the blame and stuff. Right? That was a part of the presentation. I think it's a lot kind of like weaponize the Human Services Committee against these organizations, and it's not good. It doesn't serve. So I'm just hoping that we can go in a different direction.
Yeah, thank you. And I think it's not the advantage to buy, but and all of us, we would have heard from William and Henry. They all want to collaborate and work together. And speaking with the gentlemen, their frustration was very apparent. So I just said, like, hey, come be a partner. So that's it. So thank you very much, guys. And try to be respectful of everyone's time. I apologize for. It's good to be back in the space. This is really good. Youth and education. I know you talked a little bit about.
Yeah, I won't mention the others, but I really want to highlight that we had students with rivet needs do a wonderful presentation with Principal Vanetta. Regarding the playground, right now they moved from the school that they were in prior. That was the elementary middle school, and that had playground equipment that was for younger kids. Right now, they do not have a playground that's conducive because they moved into an old high school building. Yeah. Unfortunately, they use the park that's across the street from the school, and they deal with the dogs and everything else that unfortunately park is often on Mondays when they come back over a weekend. They put cones over the dog poop so the kids are not stepping in the dog poop, and they need a space that's one collectively appropriate for age of children, and play is so important. And we did talk about how recess is actually a class at school, and it is a part of the day for kids. But, again, for these kids to present, have to talk about things and obstacle courses in the way to play, then we really need to deal with it. But there are two young people that, one was a fifth grader. Well, they both were fifth graders.
I believe so, yes.
They were amazing. They interjected. They got their hands up to ask questions, or to respond to our questions. And it was funny because even when I got this letter through the CDC, through Dr. Christie, and it was like when I first thought, it was like, let's reach out, let's connect this, talk to Jessica about it as well, because it's again one of those things that could have been in either one of the committees. But I always think it's so great when we give one as a youth developer, youth chance to present. And they always surprise what you do, give them the platform. And I think we've had some amazing presentations in parks as well with 108. And our school, unfortunately, some of our schools are very, very old. They're over 100 years old. Even the ones that were built in the 50s are not up to date with the stuff that they need in technology. So yada, yada, yada. They did a wonderful presentation. They asked us to support their request for funding. They have already put in requests with the borough president, which we should follow up with as well, and also the councilwoman. So, we did pass a motion to support funding requests for them. And I think we need to also do some of the advocacy as well with both of the elected officials' offices.
All right, thank you. So we do have a motion right there by Rhoda Diaz, so that is support. So, yes.
Yeah, there's a typo in the motion. That's my fault. It's not funding raising, it's fundraising.
Okay. Duly noted. Thank you. You have one question.
No, they'll stop the whole full board over.
They want a playground in the open area in the back that goes towards Second.
There's an area that's right connected there with the school that they would like to have reconverted.
That's more.
The study was about, I believe, $900,000, $1 million to do it.
Yeah, because it's like an open field, really.
That's what's in the bathroom. That's actually really good.
Well, next economic development.
Yes, so we had one, motion, a presentation actually from, Department of Cultural Affairs for a art installation in the West 25th Street, library. The individual, Diana, her artwork was wonderful, it was great, she's actually done like a few other installations from other places. Did ask specifically, because she's not from the community, even though her work is great, did ask, kind of what the talking for, like if they actually consider people from the area, and just kind of being fair in their choice, because I'm thinking if you have done a number of different projects, then give some other people, also a chance to, but there was a whole process, there was a vetting process, BBC and other organizations were involved, so we unanimously passed the support of her moving forward with our work in the library, and
Also, another good presentation. So,
well, I mean, for the entire meeting, we had, we had Jana, Lasorda, who works Parks Department, obviously came and just talked about all the different initiatives that are going on with parks. They have some open spaces that are coming available, that are either, free for the community, but there is sort of a fee that's associated with just renting out the space. We had a presentation from Start Small, Think Big, who works with a lot of small businesses within the community in terms of helping them get on their feet and helping them sustain themselves and move forward. So, yeah.
It's good. I listened to it today because I'm a part of it. So it was fun. We've kind of coincidentally in a lot of our from our yes, sorry.
I didn't realize they're combining those two.
I didn't, yeah, but we might as well just dive in and segue if that's fine. We'll go back.
Can I just say, in regards to, I just said we're, for parks, we're gonna recite the meeting minutes for full board, but I think it's important to know that, we had the presentation on Pier 107 and they decided not to move the pier. And the reason being that there wasn't enough support either way, but there was more support for it, either people who don't care or let it stay than it was to move it. And they think they have better opportunities with the area in that space due to the water restrictions and all that. And then let's talk about Earth Day conference behind. But I'm going to ask for support from everyone who's already on. That I just need to reach out to. So we're going to get moving on that, but it'll be on the 21st of April at the Museum of the City of New York.
I'm with the board, I wasn't able to make last week. Yeah, I just wanted to, because I know that public safety, they kind of gave their full kind of team feedback and we cover some of youth and education. So I know you had a farm on the first. So good. Gonna move us forward. If everyone's fine, I'm gonna get into discussion regarding board procedures.
Point of information.
Yes.
We had set up a separate task subcommittee, I guess, for parks to discuss the parks tours, which is ongoing.
So it's not really because
Not a-
Xavier has to create the subcommittee or
Okay.
acknowledge it, but.
Well, we
it's
didn't
a-
get it acknowledged at an executive.
Okay, perfect. So then, yeah.
Yeah, that's go.
And then
That's
second would be, could we have the same thing for the Earth Day committee?
Earth Day Conference Committee
Okay.
to prepare for it and to
Oh,
make
to like,
sure that.
to lead up to the event.
Just to have that,
Carve out the
offline.
space. Okay, give me, I don't foresee any problem with that. It depends on the staff's availability for the calendar and, because then that would have to be Oh, that would have to be another public meeting, virtually, so as long as we can get it arranged with the staff and such. I don't have a.
Okay, well, last year we just had phone calls, so
Okay.
I don't know if that's.
Oh, if it's a working group, that's different.
Yeah, the
group
working
is
group,
not
sorry,
active.
it's
Committees, subcommittees, task forces
Okay,
have to be
so-
established. We're working this
as
area.
similarly as the
Working.
parks work group.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Yeah, so it's again, just as an example, Second Avenue Subway Task Force, that's a group that has to meet publicly. The working groups, the station stops, work outside and then bring that information back. They do not have to-
I will get it right next.
Okay, no, we are all in this together. Okay, committee discussion regarding board procedures, a couple of things again. We've been doing a really good job, like I said, we're improving day by day, and I think it's very important that we continue to lean in. Just like when we had this conversation now, we're able to share a lot of information, find points of collaboration, better articulate what we're trying to pursue, what our goals are, long-term models that we'd like to see completed. And with that, it's one of the things that I've found in my years of service, because Dave and I, we got on around the same time, and then I had a small time off the board for about 3 years when I was living abroad. We talked about, how we've evolved so much and creating better synergy, better process, and we're all having a part of this, and that's important when it comes to our improvement on the existing model, which is what I'm hoping we can all do. And so I think in this particular situation, I'm looking at it in this construct of we're all volunteers, yes. We all love this community. We all have unique personal backgrounds that formed and shaped us. But we also have lives we live outside of here. And we have limited, as I've said with a couple different people on board, time is the only commodity we have. And it's how we spend it. And that is very important. So if we only have 10 hours a week to volunteer towards Community Board 11, that's what your capacity is. Then I think it's important for all of us to share that with one another in this space. So that way we know what our structure is and how we work, because we all have different work schedules. I'm very transparent in the sense that I have, 2 children, 3 fur dogs, one a production company, a film festival, and doing all this work as chair. And Nilsa, we know what she does. She's all over the place as well, very busy. But it's about accessibility. And I try to be accessible to everyone. Like I said, you call me if it's urgent late at night, Jason B in the web, he and I would be on the phone with State District needs a budget until 1 a.m. working. Because that's the only time you have. David, not calling you out, but David has said like morning or evening is best unless it's urgent. John has been very, so it'd be important for us to kind of establish for procedural components before I segue to what Angel's been working on for the chair kind of like roles and responsibility. He's kind of still working on that. That'll be reviewed and presented hopefully in the coming months. But I think it's an opportunity for us, for me, for me to hear from you with our procedures, because I'm all over the place. Like I said, I was in the Metropolitan Cab. When I have that information fresh before I send an email, just forwarding it, it's easier for me to have a 5-10 minute conversation, crafting a 20-30 minute email. I just don't, my mind doesn't work that quickly, and it's easier because I walk everywhere to be able to offload that information. Or if you don't mind hearing the dogs in the background when I'm taking care of them, or the kids yelling, I don't want to eat lima beans or green beans tonight. We just had that last night. I'll get on the phone and do that. It's just much easier because I don't have if you think about it, a quick 5-minute, 10-minute phone call, you can offload that information and it gives a better explanation. But again, that's just one of the ways it makes it easier for me to serve all of you. And that's what I'm here to do, serve this body, and by extension, we serve the community. So
You guys are muted, by the way. I can't hear anything.
Can you hear us now, Jose?
Yep, now I can hear you. 2 minutes you were muted.
So thank you, for saying that, because I know you all wear different hats. And we don't all just do one thing, like I can speak for myself. Do just one thing. So, like for me, and you know, a lot of you know that when you reach out to me, I may not pick up immediately, so it works best for me like in a text. And then, because I do numerous Zooms, I'm now running, I actually run 2 buildings and one not-for-profit preservation company organization. So we run a multi-service center now in Hunts Point. So we expand the services there, and I'm overseeing the East Harlem development that will be developed within the next year that will come in front of land use and communities. So, you know, just like with everything, I think that as we're talking around it, I think it would be also a good suggestion, like if we actually write down what's best for us, because I think it'll be hard for you to remember. You know, like I'll try, if you give me a late night call, I'll try to answer back, but more than likely, it'll be really hard for me to focus, and you may not get the answers that you want. And additionally, I think the staff knows that I try to bother them as little as possible. I know how busy they are, and I'm sensitive to the fact that the staff may have a 7-hour day, but obviously you see the staff that's sitting here, they go more than beyond their 7-hour days. So you know, I implore not only for your working style, but for the chairs to be considerate of the office staff, because the office staff do have lives as well, and they have significant others and children and those who like to have career. So that if we think overall how best we can also communicate, right, with the staff and with you, because you have all those things and you have children and everything, it would be helpful. For me, leaving me a text message often is more helpful. For those of you who call me and leave me a message and I don't respond for days later, you know that's not good. So I apologize in advance to this, right? Look like I'm snubbing, right, David?
I am taking notes. I didn't want to necessarily include this in the minutes, so I think you can edit it out if you want.
Thank you. I've been trying to. Adam, how come you last day?
Pretty flexible, you know, whatever I've been doing, I'm good with doing. I do screen my call. So if I don't know the number and you don't leave a message, I ain't calling you back.
Jim said on the phone, but with that, respectfully, I don't have, I saw a lot of, you sent the text earlier. I don't have a lot of folks, number or name logs to the number, so when I do have that, I pick up for people that I know. I don't know, I'm not picking up. But just with the ministry work, I have to be accessible a lot. So I'm flexible, but I don't like to be called at night for work. I can be waiting until the morning. But I'm flexible. I'm here. I'm actually so I completed all of my studies and my work at Columbia. So I'm working a lot more full time at the church right around the corner. I'm here close. Here. But yeah. Another thing with respect to that, I would like to, if I could be invited more with at least a week or two in advance, just notice of events that are related to, all events that are related to health and human services, not just like immigration stuff, like everything that falls in our purview. I would like to just like be able to attend a lot.
I would love to include everyone, and sometimes just so you're aware, everyone here, I sometimes they land 48 hours. That's when, and it's, but if you want me to,
if we could,
yeah,
just let me know. So I'll try to, I'll try to go. Mondays and Fridays are the hardest because I have the young people from East African still.
Wednesdays are the Wednesdays,
1:30 to 3:30.
What days?
Oh, on Mondays and Fridays. So we have, they do like community service and that's great.
Okay, that's helpful. Thank you. Hold on. Okay, yes.
Well, I am available by text mostly. I work a ridiculous work day during the day, from usually 8:30 until whenever I stop. So I just take breaks to come be here with you all people, and it's wonderful to be able to do that. I prefer evenings and weekends if you're gonna reach out to me. Sometimes I don't respond right away, and I apologize for that in advance. And then I'm mostly available via email. I'm just, gets to be a lot to keep up with sometimes, so please be patient with me. And I echo what you said about events and needing notice, because I have a meticulously planned schedule. And when Parks tells me that there's an event tonight or tomorrow, it is very unhelpful. So if there's ways that we can get advance notice for things so I can bake it in, that would be great.
Yeah, so, and we talked about that, and as soon as I get it, I'll push it forward. Again, I've had literally the day before, and it's entirely frustrating, because you know how crazy my life is, and it is what it is, but, you call the ants and kind of thing, but absolutely. Michelle, and I guess Jose, and then we'll come to David.
My schedule is insane. I'm pretty busy so solidly that I'm not taking lunch, and I would try to call Angel, like, I'm gonna call you, and then I am working straight through. I mean, Sunday mornings I'm busy, but Saturday mornings I'm just so exhausted, but that's probably the best time to contact me. I
Only Saturday.
I text you, but I might not respond. I might not respond in advance. My sister, everyone, I try.
That's helpful, thank you. The next, Jose.
Don't call me, don't email me, don't text me, no WhatsApp, don't call talk. No, I'm just kidding. But my business is 24/7. It never closes. So you can reach out whenever. And now I'll respond eventually. So you call me. I mean, Xavier usually gets me. I'll call him back. Text. But yeah, so I'm pretty busy with the world, as all of you are as well. But yeah, my business is never ending. So there you go. Thank you.
Thank you, Jose, I appreciate that.
So I'm a procrastinator to the prioritizer, so I prioritize whatever's at the moment and put off what is not at the moment. You get me, and a lot of times texting, if you need me right away, don't text and then call, because text goes beep, and that's it. You don't hear it again, or and then sometimes I'm in the cafeteria between 3 and 6 is not a good time to get me. In the cafeteria, we can't hear anything anyway, so reach out when you can. I'll get back to you eventually, like Jose said. I overcommit. That's what it is.
We all do, right?
So maybe you're calling twice. I got back to 2 days each, a day late. Yeah. Got back to it.
Yeah. So and again, it's kind of like the code is like, I can just press if it's urgent.
Like early mornings are generally good,
Yes, Nelson.
No, so, I know that we used to make a concerted effort, and I'm sure we still do, to include the chairs on anything that will come up. So I'm wondering if we can revisit with the organizations that the CAB and all that, to make sure that not only does say Angel or Khalid and you are on the emails, because I still get a lot of emails as the former chair, but that we can also include, like, for, let's say, the Metropolitan CAB, that they send an announcement and they include ISAC. That if it's the Parks Department, that they send you and whoever they do for CB11, but that they include Jessica. That, DOE includes you, including a lot of the providers that are doing SYP. They want to get in touch with you because of Christy. I'll talk to you, not by central text. But if because I know that Angel forwards everything that he can, and he disseminates it in a lot of different ways. But if there were ways that our committee chairs can actually be added, or to take the initiative and act themselves, I think that would be really helpful.
I still get on that chat. I was on there 7 years ago. Still on there.
That's extremely helpful. Thank you, Nelson. Yes, wherever we can plug in, and we're still updating with. And Jess had sent a bunch of forwards a little while ago that we're still being emailed to the vice chair handle. So that brings me to the next part of the, so I appreciate you all leaning into the conversation and talking about your availability, your workflow. Obviously, there will be exceptions to that rule as we go through life. That is normal. I also implore everyone that we continue to lean in and how we, like I say, the spoken and written word is the most inexhaustible resource, but we still make mistakes, and it's if it was as evolved as our technology that we have here in this room, we wouldn't have the problems we do today. With that said, we had talked and pulled up the agenda tracker that's in your executive, our kind of sandbox, if you will. When I go to events, what I'm working, my habit now is going, when I go to an event, I may dump something into that. So when you have a conversation, the liaison, so we can have a conversation later on and talk about it. So be brief, talk about it, see if this agenda is too packed or you have other thoughts. But if there's something pressing like what we had today with that cab and health and hospitals, it was, sometimes it has to be that quick of a pivot. Now, how long did that take us? About 15 to 20 minutes, but we accomplished. So again, I'm going to be leaning into that. Jess does a good job with that and others when planning. So I think if we could do more of that, I'll text or I'll send it, make a quick phone call. Hey, this left an event, something was last minute. I just put this in here. Let's have a chat real quick. Because again, it's easier for me to like brain dump right away on walking to say a doctor's appointment or whatnot. And then we can catch up in more detail. So yes, Nelson, you have a question.
I just have a quick suggestion. You know, when we're assigning or we assign board members to external boards, usually there's an expectation. And so as part of my chair report, every time I will go to an external board, about something, I will add it in so that it was known. But oftentimes people who are not like you are reporting do not come back and tell the board exactly what was going on at that meeting for that month. And so for your consideration, I'm wondering even a form of something could be developed. I have developed something where we have put it in practice, where you go to, let's say, the Metropolitan Cab, that whoever's there is actually taking notes and they give you the minutes from the last month, so that they can come back and they can either add it as part of the documentation for reporting, or at least have a debrief, like let's say it's human services, where let's say Carlos Diaz will actually get up and say at this month's, you know, and so that the committees are informed by the person who's representing in that external board, because it doesn't matter if he goes, but if he doesn't come back and brings back information, right? And or it's not disseminated, right? He has the information, he doesn't, it's not that he intends to keep the information, but it's not disseminated. Then how do you know what's going on? Like I know, you know, Will Smith, and I know that he does good work in the prior chair with deceased now. But what is actually going on in Metropolitan? That may be needing other than you going to let's say the legislative breakfast and doing a follow-up and being voted on here. So I think that as the committee chairs, other people are tasked to represent, and we do share information, that those that are outside and external boards have to do it as well. At the very least, submit a report so that it can be distributed.
I think that's a fair recommendation. Whatever you're working on this for, and I'd be glad to. And we are going to talk about how those that sit on outside bodies, that they are, because again, if I go, I'll report back in my chair report, but and that then it's shared, but it would be helpful on a monthly basis when they have a meeting. Okay, that sounds good. Next, Angel has been working on a chair, kind of like it delineates like roles, responsibilities, make it a little bit easier to digest, and so that way be more efficient as an organization. Do you want to talk a little bit about that? I know
No,
it's not
I
ready,
told you
but
I was working on it still. You're like jumping the gun.
I'm just happy about it.
It's not ready yet. suggest, yeah, so I'll share copies with you guys when I finish it off. I'm kind of working on fine tuning it. I've been working on it for a while. I'm picking it up and putting it back down, depending on how frustrating you guys have been. But so a couple of things, right? Because there's like, you know, how you all work with each other, which you just discussed, but there's also how you work with us, and then how we're able to work with you, right? Like we can't turn on a dime sometimes because we're dealing with an external party. They may not be necessarily available. We have to make sure that, you know, despite y'all's enthusiasm, that we're still complying with open meetings law, that we're not just adding something at the last minute without notice. So sometimes, you know, it's difficult to just kind of snap and make it happen. And that's just like a simple example. But also we found, you know, over time that, you know, chairs come on, they don't necessarily, you know, committee chairs don't necessarily know everything that they're supposed to do. It's a lot, like, you know, like you said, you guys have busy schedules. However, there's a lot that we need from you, frankly, just what it is, right? And the thought behind this document is to have a reference document that informs you of what it is that we need, and also something that you can look to remind you, like, oh yeah, but this thing and that thing. And it's wordy because I am long-winded, but the point is to be detailed. So if there's doubt and you just look to the reference document, you're like, oh, that's what the intention of this thing is. And you know, like what the point of it is, it isn't just to give you all a ton of homework or, you know, have you take on a third job. That's not the point. But the thing is that for us to be able to work with you, we need that. Otherwise, we're just stuck. We're not getting agendas on time. We're not getting minutes on time. We're not getting things posted on time. We're not getting, you know, people invited on time. It just becomes a mess. And a lot of our day-to-day, frankly, is juggling all of that, right? Like spinning plates and juggling at the same time, so that when you come to a meeting, it looks all smooth and people are complimenting you on how smooth the meetings are. You know, it's a lot of stuff that we do to be able to make that happen. And that's fine, but there's parts that we absolutely need your cooperation steady so that we're able to do that, right? Because just like, you know, throwing a monkey wrench very regularly, it's hard to keep the plate spinning, right? So then when you'll ask me, hey, Angel, can we add this? And I'm like, no, it's because it's not because I'm trying to be uncooperative. It's because it's just not going to fit there, right? Like we've been spinning and spinning and spinning to get this ship rolling in this particular, rolling in this particular direction. And then you throw something at the last minute. I'm like, yeah, no, I'm not going to do that because it doesn't make sense. So that's the idea behind the document. And we're thinking that it'll be a good reference document for existing chairs and also a good orientation document for new chairs, right? Because the new chairs are having to look at, having to get a handle on all the subject matter that the particular committee is, you know, tasked with, plus all the current events that are happening, the ongoing conversations that are happening. So there's, you know, quite a bit to be juggling while trying to do a good job. So if you have a thing to look back on, right, like the common questions, hey, Angel, how do the minutes go? Hey, Khalid, how do I do this? Hey, Marlene, where does this go? It'll be there. Not that we won't be able to answer, of course we will, but it'll also be there just, you know, so you can just look at it, oh, yeah, that's right, I do it this way, or this is how I format this is how I format the other thing. With the hope being that you all will look at it, right? Because you could have a million laws, but then nobody looks at it, then who cares? And that it'll be helpful to you and ultimately helpful to us. So it's most of the way there, but there's a couple of last, you know, adjustments to be made to it, but also some related documents, right? Like we're going to come up with how to write minutes, you know, how to write a letter, how to write a reso. And then, you know, some kind of proposed changes to how we like do business with, you know, coming out of committee meetings. Like we have the habit of letter of support, and then there's no letter. We need to remedy that because it's confusing. Because of a committee, it's always been confusing, and I've been here a bit now, and I'm still confused. Letter of support, I'm like, I don't know what you mean. Like a letter of support for what specifically, right? So just trying to get that ingrained into the process so that we actually have a draft letter. So then when you vote on it at full board, the rest of the body knows what it is that they're voting on. And, you know, we're not left to like, you know, figure out what it is. Like, Angel, that's not what I meant. Like, well, you didn't say what you meant. you know, so I had to make it up, you know, that kind of thing.
And like, give us a name on it. So Angel, thank you very much. We appreciate the work and then any conversations, I think, or activity with the staff, finding that time, if Angel and I have weekly calls on a Monday, and we're gonna try to adjust that so Jess can be more included. But that was the time we were able to carve out on a consistent basis, just so we can go through everything. For example, right before full board, that Monday, all about full board. And I think that's important and help give us guide rails and how we can function better and optimally. And so look forward to seeing that document. I think that'll be a really productive meeting.
Yeah, and not everything in this news, so don't panic. It's mostly what you already do, which is written out.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And for me, for example, if you have points for a letter, because sometimes they don't allow go back and forth on it. Even just bullet points on what you're supporting makes it easier for me to craft, because you'll put the history of why the institution, what they're doing, why the committee supported it. And then it makes it very easy to wordsmith if you want. Okay, that I think covers on that. Are there any further questions on that? Thank you. I'm going to, just real quick, I'd like to go into executive session to discuss something that caught my attention last night and also something from last month that dealing with some kind of uncomfortable situations with outside organizations and also to typically where we talk about conduct and stuff like that. It's private, it's confidential, and what is said in the room stays in the room.
Need a vote.
So before we do, we need to entertain a motion, second, and then vote it. Yes.
I make a motion to go into executive.
All right. Then call the roll.
You can do this by affirmation.
All those in favor? Any abstain?
That's the good part about the games.
Okay, thanks. Let me know when we're recording off and then the camera.